Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. I am Sarah Lugers. I'm the Director of Communications at Gold Standard. I'll be your moderator today. I'm joined by Michelle Para, who is the Global Relationship Manager at ClimateSeed and the star of today's show, as well as Richard Iliff, the Standards Manager for SustainCert. As you likely know, SustainCert is the official certification body for Gold Standard for the global goals, which was officially launched or spun off from Gold Standard at the end of last year. Just to do a quick run through for what we'll address today, we'll be talking about some really cool opportunities to showcase and distinguish your projects. Primarily, we'll be focused on ClimateSeed, the new platform launched with support from BNP Paribas, which Michelle will walk you through in detail. And we'll also cover the big picture about why Gold Standard is collaborating with ClimateSeed and what other opportunities this affords project developers. In this context, we'll talk about a new Gold Standard innovation, the development of SDG Impact Tools, which you may have heard about, hopefully did, in our recent communications. And then Richard Iliff, who is leading the certification on the SustainCert side, will also talk to you about opportunities for some of you who might also have projects, not just Gold Standard, but some under other third-party standards. And then we'll open it up to questions. So throughout the presentation, please feel free to submit your questions using, I think there should be a questions entry area for everyone who's attending. And then we'll get to those and try to address all of them after the presentation. So to get started, why this collaboration among Gold Standard, SustainCert, and ClimateSeed? Well, you can see it right here on the slide. What we're looking to do is to mainstream credible SDG impact quantification. So what do you mean by credible and what do we mean by mainstreaming? When we talk about credible, we're really talking about raising the bar in terms of ambition. All of you on the line, Gold Standard project developers have demonstrated already that it's possible to deliver verified impacts towards the SDGs within projects in carbon markets, which wasn't a foregone conclusion in the early days of the Kyoto Protocol. And so from our view, it's time to take this to the next level. We want to help you deliver more impact, but make it easier for you to do it. And the way we're thinking about that is by standardizing and streamlining the MRV process so that it's simpler to deliver verified impact at scale so that it becomes mainstream. So that's the high level objective. After Michelle introduces the ClimateSeed platform and how it help connect you with buyers, we'll talk about those additional Gold Standard and SustainCert opportunities geared at making credible SDG quantification mainstream. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Michelle, who will take it from here. Let's see, Michelle, I've made you presenter.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Let me see how I can get my screens in here. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Sarah, can you see my screen?
Yes, indeed.
Perfect. So hi, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. So my name is Michelle, and I am the relationship manager here at ClimateSeed. And what I do is I work with project developers. I look for projects around the world to add to our platform so that we can promote them and add them to our network. And so what is ClimateSeed? So ClimateSeed is a digital platform that wants to connect project developers or project carriers with organizations and corporations that want to offset their unavoidable carbon emissions. And the way we do this is we have a centralized platform where project developers own their own project sheets, so they can tell the story about their projects, add photos in their project sheets, how the project works, how it has an impact, talk about the different SDGs that are impacted by the project. And probably the best part is that the project developers get to set their own price. And so we don't negotiate and we don't buy the credits from the project developers. The project developers set their own price, whatever they think is fair, and they add it on the platform. And then the project will be available on the platform, and the buyer will just directly buy them through the platform without the need of the hassle of negotiating prices. We also provide a robust due diligence, both for project developers and also the buyers. So everyone that has access to the ClimateSeed platform has access because they have passed this due diligence that I will explain a little bit later on. And we also provide tools to engage stakeholders. For example, we have a voting module that we have been using in events. To engage events participants, we can also use them for engaging clients or employees in a city, in a company. So we're trying to provide many tools to make this as easy as possible and make sure that projects are getting funded. So climate. Sorry.
Let me just interrupt for one moment. I think you might want to go into slideshow mode. We are still on seeing your first opening screen, but we heard you loud and clear.
Oh, that's strange. Let me see.
We see now.
Okay.
Now we see business, but it's still, you might want to enter slideshow mode, which we're seeing.
Where I was. Is it slideshow mode now?
No, it's not.
That's strange. Well, I'll make it, let's see if I can make it bigger. Like this, I think most people can see them.
We see it well, that's good.
Okay, so, oh, sorry, then, did you guys see this slide?
Nope, but you covered all the points, so I think that all
perfect. Good. So, as Sarah introduced us by, we are the first social business of BNP Paribas, which is the largest bank in Europe. And as such, we reinvest 100% of our profits back into environmental initiatives such as educational campaigns, project developments, and just additional technological solutions within our platform. And we're audited every year by the Grameen Created Lab to make sure that we follow their standards. And so ClimateSeed wants to provide these buyers with a variety of projects within one centralized platform. So we're looking for projects in forestry and land use, agriculture, water and waste management, renewable energy, community-based projects. We like cook stoves, any kind of project that is of high quality and anywhere around the world. Right now we have about 20 projects that are online. And they encompass this variety, but we're always looking for more. We're finding that there's a lot of interest and a lot of demand in the market right now. So we always want to have as many projects as possible so that we can provide this variety to our clients. And something that's important to note is that all of the projects that are on the ClimateSeed platform target the UN SDGs. And so what we have to offer project developers is a large network, a large centralized network, a global network. So not only do we have our own business development team that is looking for buyers to buy credits through the platform, but we also benefit from the support of BNP Paribas. Right now we have about 300 senior bankers that are promoting the platform and the projects that are within it to their large corporate clients and organizations around the world. And so that's what we're trying to offer our project developers. And we're working with companies, we're working with cities and public institutions and authorities. We're working with asset owners and investors. And we're also working a lot with event planners because we see now that there's a huge trend on making events carbon neutral. And so there's really a lot of demand. And so what we try to do is have as many projects on the platform to get funded through all this demand. And so again, here we'd like to help you guys reach a global network and improve the visibility of your projects. We promote the projects through our events that we go to. We promote the projects also through events of other clients. And we try to promote the projects in different presentations, proposals to clients and such. And again, I want to highlight the fair pricing that's involved in ClimateSeed. We're not brokers and we're not retailers, so it's all for the project developers to get 100% of the price. And so the way that it works is that the project developers set the price of their carbon credits and they will get 100% of the price, but we add an additional 15% to cover for our operations. And as I said, as a social business, eventually, once we do generate profits, they will be reinvested back into environmental initiatives. And so ClimateSeed provides transparency and security for everyone involved in the platform, all participants, project developers, and buyers. And so everyone goes through our due diligence process, but project developers first have to be, the projects have to be audited and certified by international standards, such as Gold Standard. Then we perform a banking due diligence that includes anti-money laundering, anti-terrorism, and reputational analysis. And lastly, once you have passed the due diligence process and you have access to the platform and have listed the project has to be validated by our sustainability committee, which is comprised of academics and industry specialists that review the project and make sure that they ask pertinent questions and that the project sheet is up to par to what clients are expecting. So our onboarding process takes about 3 to 4 weeks. So the project developer reaches out to ClimateSeed, or I can reach out to the project developers. Then we go through the due diligence. So the project developer provides all the documents that we need for our banking KYC. Then we need all the terms and conditions signed by all participants of the platform. Then once the due diligence is approved, then I can grant access to the project developer to the platform. Then they can submit the project is reviewed and validated, and then finally, the project is listed on the ClimateSeed platform where the buyers can actually see the project and they're able to buy the credits. And then on the buyer side, the process goes pretty similar. So they set the contribution, they look through the projects, and then once they check which project they like to contribute, and they have passed it through their own through their own processes, then they can buy the credits through the ClimateSeed platform, and then we will retire the credits on behalf of the buyer. And our hope is to also provide the buyers with additional support materials, such as updates about the project, to help them really educate and help them promote their good actions that they're taking, and that they can go public about all the good actions that they're doing and the project that they're promoting. Lastly, these are some of our partners that are promoting ClimateSeed. Gold Standard is one of our great partners, BNP Paribas, as I said, WBCSD. And these are all partners that are promoting the platform as well as the projects within the platform. And so this is just part of my presentation. And now I would like to present my demo. Let me see how I can do that. Maybe I can switch my screen to this. Sarah, can you see the ClimateSeed website on the screen?
Still seeing your PowerPoint. You might need to shift on your sharing to a limited.
Let me see if maybe by closing it. Yeah, it says that it's showing.
See your screen, but it is still the slide.
Wow, that's so strange because I just closed out of it. Ah, there it is.
There it is.
Okay, so now to actually show how easy it is, I want to do a quick demo of the platform. So this is the ClimateSeed website, and once you have gone through our due diligence and I have granted access to the platform, you can go up here and log in, and then you will go into your profile page. And so in here, you can add, for example, the logo of your company. You can have a little bit of a description of your organization, where you're based, the different projects that you have in your portfolio, staff, the credits available on the platform, and when you were funded. You can also add team members in here. So you can have a picture of the team members that were involved in the projects that are listed on the platform, their positions, and a bit of a description of their background. And most importantly, this is where you can add the projects. And so I will make a new project. So this is pretty self-explanatory and has quite a bit of information. We want to provide as much information as possible for our buyers. So in here you have the project name. You can have the project category and choose from the menu. You can also have impact type, either CO2 sequestration or avoidance, the country in which your project is located, and in here you can actually draw specifically where the project is. So let's say my project is in Antarctica. I can go in here and draw specifically where my project is located. And so then once the project is validated and in the project page, you will be focused directly on the location of the project. Here you can have the different project certifications, the registry that you're using to hold your credits, the pricing. So in here you can either have one price for all your credits, or we also provide volume dependent pricing. So in here, let's say this is €5 from 1 to 10. And then the next one will be €6 from 11 to 100. And so you can have as many tranches as you need, and this will be reflected in the public page. In the project summary, you can have a bit of an introduction of what your project is, the start date and timeline, when you received this different certifications, when you launched the project, things like that. What the project does and how it works are really important, because that's really where we get into the details of how like what the impact of the project is. And also something that clients are really keen to know is how their contribution helps. So what does this the carbon credit sale contribute to? So we can have, for example, social programs, school, like they built a school or things like that. And you can have in here the different impacts and how much of a credit goes to each of the contributions. Then in here you can have, you can go into the impacts of the SDGs. So in here you'll have a description, and you can add different SDGs up to 5 for now. Then in here you can add local partners as well. You can add their logo and a bit of a description of what they did within the project. You can add images. This is really important because it really helps visualize how the project is and who is impacting. Videos are super helpful. And then lastly, we ask our project developers to add verification, validation, any kind of reports that give additional information to the buyers, because we're trying to make this a one-stop shop where they can have as much information as possible within the platform so that they don't have to go to another source to get more information. And this can be like an Amazon where they just kind of click around, and once they've committed to contributing to a project, that is just really easy for them to do. And so you submit the project. We can't submit it right now because everything is missing, but what your project would eventually look like is like this. So this is the page that the buyers see. And so they can add, they can filter the project through category, project category, different locations and SDGs that they would like to target. And so, for example, we have this project, a water purifier project, and we have some information in here. So this is what your public page will look like. And you're the owner of everything. So you will be the one adding all these pictures and adding all the information on the project. And this is how the map looks like. So it focuses in specifically the area of the project. Here are some photos that would be provided by you. And in here, we talk about how the project contributes to the UN SDGs, a bit of a timeline, and lastly, how it helps and how much it is. And so in here, in the real platform, there will be a contribution button here, and then a window pops up where the buyers select the amount that they would like to buy, and then both parties get a term sheet with the details of the transaction. And then once we receive both assets, the credits from the project developers and the funds from the buyer, then we settle the transaction and we give the funds to the project developers. And then once the buyer is ready, we retire the credits on their behalf. And so that is it for my part, Sarah. So if you want to take over again, and then I'll take any questions you guys have after we're done with the presentation. Thank you very much.
Sorry for the delay there. Thanks very much, Michelle. Let's see, and then let me practice what I preach and set to slideshow. So just as a quick reminder, go ahead and submit your questions as we go through, so we have a good sense of what you want to hear more about. And thanks again, Michelle, for sharing this great chance for project developers to gain access to demand for high impact carbon credits. In the opening, I mentioned additional programs and opportunities for project developers that are related to this collaboration. ClimateSeed, as you can see here, is a supporter of Gold Standard's SDG Impact Tool development program. Again, with an aim to mainstream credible impact certification. What is this and why is it needed? On why it's needed, I think there are two key reasons. In order to mainstream credible impact quantification, we need to both standardize quantification and streamline the process for doing so. The reasons for standardizing are several. I think we've seen a lot of innovation in the past 15 years or so from project developers like you, finding new ways to deliver impact and measure what's happening on the ground. But with this innovation, we haven't yet achieved a standardized way to do this across, say, project types. So what we're looking for is to allow an objective comparison of project performance from one to another. Simplifying quantification and being able to select relevant indicators and targets that are pre-populated for you, for instance, depending on your project type, methodology, and sector, can really help streamline the MRV process for you. And then we are then able to aggregate these lessons and create be able to understand what the net impact is across regions or across different project types or from a portfolio of projects that you might have, and contribute to how that ladders up to, let's say, national development priorities. So I think there's a ton of potential there. And what it can also help us do is to help counter a trend that you may have noticed. It's what we call SDG washing. We really are keen to make sure that with these SDG impact tools, we can help the carbon markets avoid falling into a trap of, let's say, quote unquote SDG washing as we approach the Paris Agreement coming into force and as we move further towards the 2030 delivery date for the Sustainable Development Goals. We think it's really critical that we ensure the highest levels of credibility so that we can best leverage the new momentum that we're really so very happy to see around carbon offsetting. So I talk about enhanced credibility. That might send off alarm bells. Does this mean more work and higher costs? But that's what we're making sure that we keep top of mind, so that in streamlining the MRV process, we can help overcome some of the disincentives that you might find in addressing multiple SDGs because the monitoring burden is then higher. So with these new SDG impact tools, how do they help you? We've talked about kind of how they help the market. But as mentioned, it can help simplify quantification, again, with these pre-selected indicators and targets that directly connect to SDGs targets and indicators. And then what we're hoping to do is embed these into IT-based systems that facilitate, or in some cases even automate, parts of the certification process to shift the complexity from you to the standard and the tools that support it. And so again, how that can help is to help enhance your the way you can report on your project. So the outputs of the SDG impact tools would be the inputs into new IT-based systems that can bring your project impact to life. This can include new ways to explain what it means, for instance, that your project, if it's certified under gold standard for the global goals, is gender sensitive, as an example. And then we'll also have data visualization tools that can translate the certified data into compelling graphics. And you see a what if scenario here on the screen, and different types of assets that distinguish your projects, and then have real links into the proof, so to speak, so that the compelling imagery is also backed up with monitoring and verification reports. And then finally, you will have the chance to calculate the economic value that your project has delivered. We are right on the cusp, in fact, of publishing a new study, this time commissioned from Vivid Economics, that takes a deep dive into the valuation of the sustainable development benefits, specifically of clean cooking solutions, using the latest data and accounting for a broader range of impacts compared to the report that you might be familiar with from 2014, and also adding regional specificity. So this is giving you an idea of how we're seeing the SDG tools being able to expand your ability to report on your project, because we see this then extending throughout our entire project portfolio, moving from project averages to project-specific calculations of shared value, for instance. So keep an eye out for that new study, which we'll be publishing soon in your inboxes if you're on our mailing list. We'll be putting it to the website as well, so you can find it easily. Okay, so where are we, and how do you get involved in this program? If you haven't seen the open call for participation in the early phase of the program, it's not too late. You should have seen these in recent communications. We are still accepting expressions of interest, though note that window will close soon, probably at the end of the month. So please get in touch with us if you are interested in this program. And then with that, I will hand it over to Richard Iliff, who will talk about an opportunity for those of you who, as I mentioned, might have gold standard projects, but also projects that might be certified under other standards, to access the benefits around the SDG Impact Tools, the shared value calculation I've just talked about, and the general credibility that comes with gold standard certification. So Richard, over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Michelle. So yes, my section's fairly short. So as Sarah introduced, so really this, what I'd like to talk about today is just the opportunity really to provide a certification solution for other offset schemes whilst retaining registration with them. And so this is what we call the gold standard labeling process, and it's fully integrated into the ClimateSeed platform. So first things to note, it's a given that the project is listed on the ClimateSeed platform. So it's gone through all the procedures that Michelle talked about. And also a project is registered with a third-party standard as well. You're all gold standard project developers. You will recognize the information on screen. I will just go through it very quickly. These are the things that we think make gold standard certification unique. So just to summarize that, gold standard projects deliver multiple positive SDG contributions. So it's SDG 13 plus 2 others as a minimum, and we're also, it's a requirement to use gold standard SDG tools as they come online. So about raising the credibility of those contributions. Second requirement, engaging and including stakeholders. So practically speaking, this is seeking input from relevant and affected stakeholders throughout the lifetime of the project, including a continuous input grievance mechanism. Third, meeting safeguarding principles and requirements. So broadly speaking, that's identifying and mitigating potential harmful impacts using a framework based on environmental, social and economic safeguards. And wrapping all of those 3 things into a robust MRV and monitoring system to ensure that they are really happening. And so those of you who are familiar, so in GS4GG, there's annual reports that are required. So yeah, in essence, all of those gold standard markers, if you like, we'd like to apply those to projects that might not be registered with gold standard. There's 3 different scenarios that we envisage. The first of which is your standard gold standard project. So just to mention, really, there's nothing extra that needs to happen in the certification process. You'll be certified gold standard, and you can use the ClimateSeed platform. Just talking about the 2 other types of projects that we're envisaging is a project that's registered with another standard that's currently non-eligible for gold standard certification. just to point out really that we are inviting people to explore the possibility of adding new scopes to Gold Standard. This is something that needs a direct application to Gold Standard. We don't expect there'll be too many, but just to flag that that is an option. The thing that I'd like to talk about today really is projects that are Gold Standard eligible and are registered with other schemes. There is a solution that we've come up with, and that's basically a gap analysis process that basically matches the gaps in the host standard and closes them as it transitions across, and this is all tied up with the ClimateSeed platform as well. So what are these eligible projects? So on the next slide, this is fairly busy. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through every bit on here. I'm sure you're familiar of the three main Gold Standard activity types. So community service projects, renewable energy projects, land use and forestry. They only really make sense if you're a Gold Standard user. What they translate to for users of other standards are UNFCCC scopes, so 1, 3, 13, and 14 and 15 in brackets. These scopes can generally be considered as an eligible project type. Obviously, there's a bit more checking that may need to happen, but in principle, that's how things work. 14 and 15 refer to land use and forestry. We're a bit more prescriptive on what's eligible there, so they have to be using Gold Standard approved methodologies. But really the general point of this slide is just to bring your attention to a tool that's available on the Gold Standard Standard Documents website. So there is a tool where you can review whether a methodology that you might be applying in a host standard is applicable to Gold Standard, and whether there are additional requirements that you need to meet to become Gold Standard eligible. And so the reason that I mentioned CDM methodology is, CDM methodologies are used in other standards, namely VCS, of course, and I'm sure they're because they are pretty much as robust as you can get. So they're seamlessly used in other standards as well. So on the next slide, talking about the process. So if a project is eligible, we'd encourage people to come forward if they want to benefit from the Gold Standard value add, and certification of the impacts. So as I mentioned, the main tool to allow this to happen is a gap analysis template. Again, in keeping with everything that Sarah has said, we're trying to keep this thing simple. And so the first gap analysis template that we built, we've developed it specifically for VCS projects, and really paid attention to what the gaps are and what the duplications are. Obviously, we operate in a very similar manner. And so we really ensured that the template just focuses on the gaps and really doesn't ask you to fill in extra paperwork. So that's the main tool that is used to go through the assessment process. Just to mention that ClimateSeed are also involved in the assessment process. It's SustainCert who ultimately certifies whether a gap analysis template really demonstrates compliance with Gold Standard for the global goals. The key criteria, I guess I don't need to mention, but once a gap analysis template has been approved, a project it can be upgraded to Gold Standard listed status, and that will be shown on the ClimateSeed platform. So what happens after a project has been listed? So talking about the verification, so the listing process there really replaces registration. So if Gold Standard registration rather, so if you recall, it's a requirement to be registered with a host standard before you're even listed on the platform. What a project needs to do is just ensure that they use a gold standard approved VVB, and that the verification takes place with this VVB, and they verify to the requirements listed on the gap analysis template, and of course that they are the requirements of GS4GG. And this process needs to happen whenever verification takes place. If it doesn't take place in a given year, then an annual report needs to be submitted in line with gold standard for the global goals rules. Just to clarify that the scope of our certification is simply stakeholder safeguards and sustainable development contributions, so SDG contributions. Everything else happens according to the host standards, including crediting periods and that type of thing. So really, it's a very focused scope of certification. Once that's hopefully been approved, then a project is then upgraded on the platform with gold standard certified status, and can then access some of the claims and value adds that Sarah was talking about. So yeah, thanks very much, Sarah. That's it for me. Yeah, just look forward to any questions.
Super, thank you. Thanks, Richard. Thanks again to Michelle. Yeah, just to reiterate that projects that seek SDG certification that Richard just outlined can be early movers in that SDG Impact Tool program as well. And then, as he mentioned, be labeled gold standard, their SDG impacts labeled gold standard on the ClimateSeed website. So with that, we'll move into the questions. We have a few coming in, but I encourage you to continue submitting questions. The first one that we'll take is, I'll provide a response first, and then Michelle, perhaps you can share your perspective. The question is, what do you think about developing this platform now with the problems coming between the voluntary market and the Paris Agreement? I would contend that we don't see problems coming between the voluntary market and the Paris Agreement. If you've been on our mailing list, you will hopefully have seen a public consultation that's currently live, where we have put forward a statement on the future role and function of the voluntary market post-2020. That working group is comprised of some major civil society stakeholders, including WWF, CDP, World Bank was an observer, Carbon Market Watch was also part of the working group, as well as some of the other voluntary standards weighed in on the process. And really what that statement is capturing is that the voluntary market is more important than ever, that compared to the Kyoto Protocol, where the voluntary market was an instrument to go beyond compliance, what the role of the voluntary market post-2020 is really to accelerate progress towards the broader ambition of the Paris Agreement, which is net zero by mid-century, so balancing sinks and emissions by 2050. And so we see the voluntary market playing an important role in meeting the ambition gap, which is currently left from the NDCs that are not ambitious enough. The finance gap, where many technologies are not financially viable or NDCs are perhaps not fully funded. And then the time gap, which of course prioritizes early action compared to later action. So that's the role of the market post-2020 as envisioned by this working group, and thus the working group is recommending that there are not requirements for corresponding adjustments or letters of approval from host countries. The emissions stay within the host country and are captured in the host country's inventory, and the claim shifts to one of financing that emission reduction and contributing more broadly to the Paris Agreement. So that's a long-winded question, or rather answer to your question, but I think it's an important one. So I encourage you to look at the public consultation, review the statement, and provide any input that you might have, or if you have any further questions based on my preliminary response, please feel free to share. Michelle, I've already spoken a lot about that, but any comments from your side?
No, I think you covered it. But from our side, we developed ClimateSeed because the team worked at BNP Paribas. The idea was actually born there and developed there, and we developed it because it was necessary. It was actually a demand from a lot of the clients of the bank, because they didn't seem to be a centralized platform with quality checked projects. There might be some sketchy projects out in the market that companies are afraid, and that's why they're afraid to invest in the voluntary market. So we're trying to provide them with a sense of security going through all of our due diligence and making sure that they're funding the right people and the right projects.
Thanks a lot, Michelle. A couple of questions here. Not sure if you can answer this, but let's see. Will you be able to host an auction like World Bank's pilot auction facility, the Dutch auction approach, to set prices? Or what is, maybe you can talk about more of the thinking behind your approach to pricing?
So we don't really have an approach to pricing. We don't set the prices at all, and we try to avoid really taking part of that. The hope of the platform is to provide a fair priced, centralized platform with fair priced credits. And so we leave it up for project developers to set their own price. So if a project, it costs €3 per credit, that's okay. We have a range of prices from about €3 to €35. So it's really up to the project developer to do this, and we stay away from really telling them how to price their own project.
And just maybe a follow-up question, what type of feedback or questions have you been getting from developers on this, on the pricing model?
Well, a lot of project developers ask how to price their own credits, but it's a question that we can't really answer because it depends on the location, it depends on the project type, it depends on the size of the project, and so we just don't get involved at all. It's something, I mean, I think project developers have more experience pricing their own credits than we do because we don't have any of our own projects. And so we hope that they would price their credits fairly. But also another thing that we provide within the platform is access to see all the projects that are available within project developers. And so if there's a project developer that would like to see and kind of get an example of how another project that's similar to theirs is pricing their credits, then they can go into the project pages of another project developer and see how the project is being priced.
Got it, thanks. Yeah, pricing is always the million-dollar question in the voluntary market. Another question, it's a pretty detailed one. Do you intend to serialize the credits so each has a unique identifier? And how do you plan on tracking and traceability?
So right now we don't have a serial number for the project. And as I said before, the way that it's been working so far is that the project developer owns their own project page, and so they would be having they would name their own project. But what we do ask for serial numbers of the credits that will be sold once a transaction is done. But that's the way that we keep track of the credits. And also through our terms and conditions, we ask our project developers to update their pages in case that they've sold out and they're still listing the project. Then we can know if the project is no longer available, if there's no more credits, and then we can wait for the next issuance. But as of right now, we do not have any serial numbers per project, but that's something that we can definitely consider in the future.
Right, so you're relying on the respective standards registries to maintain the tracking of serial numbers.
Exactly, yeah.
Great. Okay, another question just popped up. Do you foresee any issues that may arise from deals or sales that might require a more complicated contract than just a term sheet? How are you thinking about those kind of more, either bigger or more complex deals?
So far, we have a term sheet, and with larger transactions, we have succeeded to just do it with a term sheet. When it comes to million credits transactions, I do think it will be a little bit more interesting, and we have a legal department that can draft a document. But as of right now, we have a term sheet, and once signed by both parties, it is binding. But I think it will be, once it gets to that level, it will be more case by case, where we would likely provide a more robust contract.
So the term sheet is working for now, and you'll adjust it.
We've had no issue. The way it works is that once a transaction is done on the ClimateSeed platform, we get an email alerting us of the transaction. Then we contact both the project developer and the buyer. We get the serial number and vintage of the credits from the project developers to add to the term sheet. And then once we have finalized all the details of the transaction, then we provide the term sheet to both parties to be signed. And then we have accounts, omnibus accounts in different registries, so that the project developer can transfer the credits to our account that we will hold on behalf of the client. And we also have the clients transfer the funds to ClimateSeed. And then once we have both, then we provide the funding to the project developer and then retire the credits on behalf of the client.
Great, that's clear. A very practical question. Are there any costs associated with being listed on ClimateSeed?
So we have two fees. We have an application fee. That's a one-time fee of €1,000. That's being waived this year. So in 2019, project developers will not be paying this application fee. And we also have a listing fee of €800, and it's waived for the first project that's listed on the platform. But if a project developer would like to add more projects on the platform, then they can pay for the second or thereafter €800 per project per year.
Great, so there's an early mover advantage here.
Yeah.
Project developers are advised not to hesitate. Another question, what level of detail, you talked about disclosure on the proceeds of carbon credit income. What level of detail are you seeing or requiring or expecting from developers?
The way that I tell project developers that I think about this, and that so far our clients have been wanting to see, but we haven't been able to get there yet, is to think of it as a pie chart. In my mind, for example, like the whole pie could be €1 of sales or one credit, and let's say 15% goes to building a school. The other 20% goes to maintaining the forest or maintaining the cook stoves. Another 30, and that would be ideal, to have some sort of percentage of how the funds are managed. But we've had a variety of answers to that. There's some that go into detail into the amount of money that goes into each SDG that they target. There's some that really go into detail and actually give us the percentages. So really, it depends on the information that you have and you'd like to provide. But we think, and our clients think this as well, that the more information we add, the better, because it really engages the client and it helps them visualize the benefits of these projects, and it helps them to with communicating to their management and to their stakeholders what kind of investment they're making in these projects.
Right. Good. Well, you know what? That's those are the questions that have come through. Well, let's give everybody maybe one final moment to share any questions, if you have any, before we just right up against the hour. So we can probably take one more, but if not, we can wrap it there. We will be we've been recording the session, and we'll be sharing this with you hopefully tomorrow or the next day. As I mentioned, please do look out for the open call for SDG Impact Tools program, as well as anyone who's interested in the future proofing, the voluntary market post 2020. Please share your feedback there if you're so inclined. And I'll thank you once again, Michelle and Richard, for the presentations, and welcome all attendees to reach out to the email addresses you see here on the screen, and look for the recording to show up in your inbox soon.
Great, thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you to everyone that attended.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.